Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to join this webinar for an hour. We know your schedules are busy, so we are very appreciative. Turkey's had a difficult time over the last 12 months or so. As I'm sure many of you who are in the UK will have seen, Turkey has been in the media constantly. Some of the news has been very sensationalist, not always accurate. And really the objective today is to try and give you an update, a fair, a balanced view on the position in Turkey in the country at the moment. And our aim primarily is for those companies that are listening, UK companies, we're really keen to get you interested in Turkey, to get you exporting if you're not already exporting to Turkey. So I shall disappear out of view. You don't have to look at me for the next hour. That's the good news. But I just wanted to sort of let you see who was on the other end of the line. We're going to go through a few slides. What I'm hoping to do is to keep our talking as brief and succinct as possible. There's the agenda on the screen. Ruth and I are here at the consulate in Istanbul. Serenay is down in the British Chamber, also in Serenay, and my colleague Clive, who's the head of DIT in Ankara, he's in our embassy there. We have an hour. We'll try to keep each of our segments to about 5 or 6 minutes, and then really I want to allow sort of 30, 35, 40 minutes to take questions, because obviously you know, by necessity, we can't cover everything and all the detail in a 1 hour webinar. So we thought we'd give some sort of top line, high level sort of messages and positions, and then hopefully the flow of questions we can pick up on some of the detail that individuals are interested in. So a very brief picture about politics and security here in Turkey. The UK, we're in a really good place at the moment. We've had a Foreign Secretary visit. Theresa May, our new Prime Minister, met President Erdogan in New York. We had Greg Hans, one of the DIT ministers, here last week. And they've all added to a really excellent relationship. Turkey's a key partner on a number of areas: counterterrorism, migration, defence, trade and investment, the fight against organised crime, etc. And you know, all this added up with all the ministerial contact really puts us in a great place. The attempted coup on the 15th of July was a traumatic, undoubtedly a traumatic event for Turkey. There was renegade members of the Turkish armed forces who, they killed 240, injured over 1,000 civilians. They took to the streets late on a Friday night. Most in the country believe the Gulen movement was behind the coup attempt, and the Gulen movement is believed to have sort of infiltrated the Turkish state since the late 1980s. Once upon a time it was a key ally of President Erdogan's party, the AKP, but relations between the two movements have sort of turned sour in sort of 2010, 2011, and we've got to the point now where the Gulen movement has been proscribed in Turkey as a terrorist organisation. Shortly after the coup, the government implemented a 3-month state of emergency. That has now been extended for another 3 months up until, I think, January 2017. I think that pure announcement of the state of emergency caused a lot of anxiety around the world. But what it's really about is giving the government quick powers to undertake the necessary measures that they deem they need to do in order to purge the government system of Gulenist sympathisers, educational establishments where the government believes a lot of Gulen followers are there as teachers, lecturers, etc. I think we need to obviously keep things in sort of relative perspective. I can talk a bit more in the Q&A if people are interested in what does the state of emergency actually mean on the ground. I think the very easy answer to that now is it means actually very little. Myself, my colleagues, Istanbul, Ankara, the Chamber, business, we all operate as normal. You wouldn't know that there was a state of emergency. The UK has been, and again adding to this sort of very good bilateral relations, the UK has been at the forefront of leading the international condemnation of the coup. The UK's Europe Minister in the Foreign Office, Sir Alan Duncan, he was the first foreign minister to visit Turkey 4 days after the coup. There's been numerous telephone calls between ministers in Turkey and Britain, and plus our public messaging. It's really sort of helped us improve our relationship, and it's really been appreciated by the Turkish government that, you know, one of the big political international players have taken such a firm stance against the coup. In terms of security, and again, I said at the beginning, I wanted to give fair, honest and balanced picture of Turkey. I don't want this to be a sort of an exercise in propaganda. Security and the threat from terrorism remains high in Turkey. We've had a difficult 12 to 18 months. We've had numerous terrorist attacks, not only in Istanbul and Ankara, but throughout the country, many down in the southeast. These have been mainly aimed at Turkish police and military personnel, but, you know, as with all terrorism, unfortunately, both civilians and foreigners have been caught up in this. These threats remain. Turkey continues to face threats from both Daesh, or ISIL as people may know them, and the PKK, which is the Kurdish terrorist organization that has waged a sort of war against Turkey for 20 to 30 years now. But at the same time, Turkey has been very good at disrupting action to beat the terrorists. Police, security authorities, they are constantly increasing security measures around town, both visible, across the country, not just in the major towns. Some of these are visible, some of them are invisible. You see a lot more uniformed police in the big cities, security checks at the airport, etc. But, as I say, we cannot hide the fact that there is a terrorist threat in Turkey. What we do need to do, we need to keep perspective. We need to understand that things like schools, shopping malls, cinemas, restaurants, they're all open. People are going to them as normal. Companies are operating as normal. Istanbul, as an example, continues to host sort of world-level events. So as a couple of examples, we had all the world's post offices here for 4 weeks. There was over 1,500 delegates, and they had a trouble-free congress and visit. We have a very large World Energy Congress going on at the moment in Istanbul. That is going on unaffected. Everybody is doing sort of business as normal. We've still got companies coming through the door, UK companies. We have a good number of companies down at a big machinery exhibition this week. So, all in all, you know, that message is, yes, there continues to be a threat, but the threat is global. It's not just Turkey. And within Turkey, life goes on as normal. People visit, people go about their normal business and daily lives. So I hope in that sort of short 2 or 3 minutes there's a sort of picture there about where we are on politics and security. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Ruth Rajavetpisan, Ruth is our economic officer here at the consulate, and she will talk a little bit about the economic picture in Turkey, and then we'll move on to some more sort of business slides. So Ruth, if I can hand over to you.
Thank you, Neil. So I'm just going to go through some of the latest statistics for Turkey. So this first slide shows the growth, inflation and unemployment figures. So the latest figures for growth for quarter two, was 3.1%, which was below the market's consensus of 3.5%. Next quarter, Q3, growth is estimated to be near or below this. The IMF and the World Bank estimates are 3.3% and 3.5% growth respectively, and that's for the whole year of 2016. Analysts are generally forecasting year-end growth to be 3%, and the Turkish government have actually just revised their forecast down from 4.5% to 3.2%. But they've kept their forecast for 2017 at 4.4%. So we'll wait and see what comes out of that. In terms of inflation, it was the latest figures were 7.3%, and that's actually decreased in September from 8.05% in August. And that's basically due to declining food and clothing prices. So it's expected to level about 7.58%, because the decline that's being witnessed now is basically due to seasonal impacts. Moving on to unemployment, Turkey's unemployment has risen to 10.2% in June, and that's a 0.6 percentage point increase on an annual basis. Employment rates in April and May, so these are the latest figures, but the employment rates in April and May this year were 9.3 and 9.4% respectively. And youth unemployment rate is rising as well, and that this rate, including people aged 15 to 24, rose to 19.4%, with a 1.7% percentage point increase. Okay, so moving on, post-coup recovery. After the coup attempts, the markets recovered quite quickly, but they haven't quite returned to the pre-coup levels of July. The lira continues to remain volatile. You can see on the graphs there how it's going up and down. It fell dramatically after the coup attempt, but actually then sort of recovered quite quickly. At that time, S&P, Standard & Poor's, one of the credit rating agencies, downgraded Turkey's credit rating shortly after the coup, and then this was also followed by the recent downgrade by Moody's, which I'll talk a bit more on the next slide. Following Moody's downgrade, the lira fell again by 1%, but once again it recovered quite quickly and has reached 2.97 against the dollar. This was basically because most investors had already priced in the possibility of a Moody's downgrade, so the reaction was limited. The economy basically broadly has been slowing down. This is due to Russian sanctions, which happened following the downing of the Russian jet back in October last year. The sanctions are now over, but there has been a bit of an impact on tourism, and also the security concerns have also have had a bit of impact on tourism as well as the business environment. Looking forward, increased uncertainties and an expected hike of rates by the Federal Reserve are things that Turkey's going to have to watch out for. So moving on to the next slide, recent developments and what's next. So as I said, Moody's downgraded Turkey's credit rating from BA1 to Baa3. This had limited impact, as I said before, basically because investors had priced it in. The reasons behind Moody's decision to downgrade were an increase in the risk related to Turkey's sizable external funding requirements. So basically Turkey needs to attract $200 billion annually to finance its current account deficit and service its foreign debt. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason was Moody's saw a weakening in previously supportive credit fundamentals, particularly growth and institutional strength. So that's things like independence of institutions and how the government has reacted to the coup and what they're doing post-coup. The government, though, are trying very hard to restore growth and perceptions. So they're doing three things which I've listed here. This new investment law, which has come into force. That came into force on the 7th of September. And that's basically to provide project-based financial incentives for innovative technology-orientated R&D focused and high value-added projects. So that should help reduce foreign dependency. Secondly, there's some new measures from the government to boost consumer demand and growth. So those are things like increasing the maximum number of instalments for expenses, accumulated debt on credit cards can be restructured, and borrowers' share on housing loans has been reduced. So that should encourage growth. And the third thing, the government and business organisations have been lobbying abroad. So just when President Erdogan attended the UN General Assembly in New York, the Turkey's Foreign Economic Relations Board had an investment forum in the US as well. So President Erdogan was able to address CEOs of global companies, and he invited global investors to stand by Turkey and to continue investing. And then TÜSİAD, which is the Turkish Industry and Business Association, so the CBI equivalent, they also organised a visit to Germany on the 23rd of September, and that was to meet German Industry Federation, members of parliament and think tanks to encourage and reassure investors that Turkey's economic stability and strong fundamentals are still there. So the next two things, what's next? I think everybody's going to be watching for the Fitch rating, which is expected late 2016, early 2017. And Fitch at the moment are the only credit rating agency that have kept Turkey's credit rating at investment grade. So if they sort of make a move, then that's something to watch for. And then the US Federal Reserve decision on interest rates. If there's an interest rate hike, that again could have an impact on Turkey. So I think those are two things to watch for. But I think, just in closing, I would say that Turkey's quite resilient, and we've been watching. There's been dips in the lira, but it seems to recover quite quickly. So thank you. I'm going to hand back to Neil.
Thank you, Ruth. We'll keep pressing ahead. If there are any questions around economic developments within the country, please do sort of type those in, and we'll try and pick up some of those at the end. I just want to move on now to sort of doing business. Before I hand over to Serenay, there's a quick slide there just with some sort of what I would call big picture, sort of top level overview of the market here, few statistics. DIT are sort of high value priorities, what they are here in Turkey and what we're focusing on. And also a mention about the UK Prosperity Fund and how that, together with work on science and innovation, is sort of adding to our overall trade and investment performance here. Obviously, we don't have time to run through individual sectors in great detail today. This is very much a broader sort of Turkey-focused webinar. But again, if there are any companies that want to know more about individual sectors, please drop us an email, type in a question. We can put you in touch with relevant sector managers, whether in Istanbul, in Ankara, in Izmir, or with the BCCT. So, without further ado, I will move on and hand over to Serenay to run quickly through doing business in Turkey. Serenay.
Thank you, Neil. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Serenay. Some of you know me. I'm representing the British Chamber of Commerce based in Istanbul here. And I'm going to talk about who we are and what we do and how we can help you further. So, if we can move on. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are one of the oldest chambers in the world, I mean, we're a membership organization in nature, and we have a really wide business network in Turkey, and through our partners, strategic partners, and local contacts, we have a huge network that we can provide. And up until 2013, this continues, but with the strategic partnership with DIT in 2013, things changed in a better business-focused way, where we started giving service to UK clients and UK companies, especially interested in Turkey and willing to do business here. You know, we have a bunch of services that I will mention, but through our membership and our own contacts with DIT's partnership, we provide a very supportive platform for you to do business here. Slide, please. Yes, so about our partnership with DIT, our role here as BCCT, the British Chamber here, we're providing service to mostly UK SMEs, where business-to-business services are mostly concerned. But as Neil mentioned, in DIT, their responsibility has turned into more government-to-government relations and high-value projects that they follow up. So we share our responsibilities like this. We have a bunch of services that we provide. It's all customized and all designed for your needs in our market. So it can be market research, partner search, event management, meeting arrangements, and also, you know, if you're coming along with trade delegation, we can provide visit support and, you know, etc. So all these services on, you know, finding and exploring more about Turkey has, you know, helped other UK companies in the past. Additionally, we have a local business network here, so we're always saying the message that Turkey is not about Istanbul or Ankara, there are other cities as well. So we have about 13, 14 memorandum of understanding agreements with these cities, local chambers. And whenever you need something in and around Turkey, we're able to provide it and provide support through their links. So we hope to provide a wider service all around Turkey for you. Next slide, please. Just want to show you some of our recent clients and the companies that we've provided support recently. Some of these companies came to Turkey with a trade delegation, or we've arranged their own service ourselves, but they all found either local partners, distributors, or they want clients. Some of them set up in Turkey, so through our diverse services, we were able to support these companies, and we hope we can add more. We currently heard about 2 or 3 new business wins, we call them, new companies that are coming to Turkey through our support, and we hope to update our presentation next time. So we have more, and we would like to help more, really. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we talked about Turkey and where we are, but I just wanted to show you, maybe sometimes it's better to look in the maps, but we're located in a very strategic place. We're close to almost 3, 4 continents, and within, accessing and having a footstep in Turkey enables you to have access to multiple markets. We're very close to other markets, and some of the leading companies use Turkey as their, regional hubs, and a lot of companies have set up their operations like this. So you can think of Turkey as a stepping stone to other markets, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, North Africa, Middle East, and all. Next slide, please. Here are some very brief names of the companies that have big operations in Turkey. From these names, you can see some of them are controlling around 30 to 90 countries from Turkey, so they have huge operations. And some of these leading companies are in our boards. There are board members, and we get together from time to time and talk about their strategies, and they're all continuing to invest more in Turkey and have a better reach within the regions surrounding Turkey. So we always support this idea that think of Turkey as a hub and expand to other regions from Turkey. Next slide, please. Just a little snapshot on the recent investments, FDI, into Turkey. You see some of the names of the companies here, and in total, we have around almost 3,000 British companies registered in Turkey. The number is rising. We have more British capital in Turkey. And we mentioned about the bilateral trade. It's a good volume, but we can be better partners. I think UK is Turkey's 10th biggest trading partner, and this can increase. There is a good relationship with UK and Turkey as 2 countries, and we have a lot of British tourists visiting Turkey each year. So this increases awareness, but we're always telling people that don't think of Turkey as a tourist destination. There is more to do. So, and this idea is changing. I think and British companies are looking at Turkey at a different angle now, and it's full business focus, and we're hoping to support it more. Next slide, please. Just briefly mentioning about the business environment and doing business in Turkey. I'm sure some of you have some interesting experiences, but the business life here in Turkey is very similar to European business ethics. It's modern, and it's the usual practices that you see. The companies that you talk to, of course, the profile of the people can change from sector to sector, but they're mostly highly educated people. They are fluent in English, and if they're not fluent in English, they find a way to make the relations smooth. So people are very welcoming. They have a good understanding of working with foreign people, and they're very eager to open. They're very eager to work with European businesses a lot. So considering EU is the biggest trading partner for Turkey, Turkish companies have a good understanding working with European countries. When paying a visit to Turkey, we always say that it's important because you have to see it for yourself and you have to meet these people, you have to get to know them and build your business up like that. Of course, you have to invest in some time and effort in Turkey, but it definitely pays off. And whenever you want to do business, we are in the picture and to support you. So we're hoping to make things as smooth as possible for you. Next slide, please. I just wanted to show you before finishing. We had recent visits, as Neil mentioned, the Minister of State for International Trade, Greg Hans, visited Istanbul. He met our board members and the IT, the Council General, and the messages were all very positive. Just yesterday, the day before, we've been to a trade show in Turkey, and there was a UK pavilion, about 10 SMEs operating in advanced engineering sector, and they've been, here at the show. We talked to them, we met them, we gave a brief about Turkey, and also the investment agency of Turkish government was there as well. So we just want to keep the message continue. The business life is continuing, and UK companies are still interested. So we hope to receive more responses from you, and we're here to help. So please, don't hesitate to contact us and ask us anything, as we'd be happy to help. I guess that's it for my cards. Do I have any other slides? No? Okay. Thank you very much for listening. Wishing you a good day.
Thank you, Serenay. That's very useful. I hope people found that helpful, informative. I'm sure some of it will be known to some people on the webinar, but it's always a useful reminder of the Chamber, their services, their strategic partnership with us. I'm going to move straight on now. I'm going to pass over to Clive Alcorn, my colleague in the embassy in Ankara, who's the head of DIT there. Clive is going to talk a little bit just about the sort of post-coup implications on business here in Turkey, and a little bit about Brexit and what it might mean for Turkey and doing business in Turkey. Clive.
Thank you very much, Neil. Yes, good morning, everybody, from sunny Ankara. Yes, it falls to me to talk about two of the most surprising, if not most shocking, things that have happened in Europe in the last 40 years. I don't think anybody would have predicted this 12 months ago, that we were looking at a world where Turkey had passed through an attempted coup and the UK was on the verge of leaving the European Union. But we are. So I think Neil's covered very well exactly what happened on the night of the 15th of July, so I won't dwell on that. But it's important to realise that the Gülenists had been around for a long time. They were very integrated into all aspects of Turkish society, armed forces, the civil service, the judiciary, the education system, and the scale of that was something I don't think was well appreciated either on the Turkish side, but certainly internationally. And they have the character of a cult more than anything else. That's the way that they're generally understood. And rooting them out, which is now the task that Turkey is very focused on, will be a messy business, and is already being seen to be a messy business. However, people talk about the scale of the dislocation in the civil service, for example. If you look at most ministries, the percentage of personnel that have actually been suspended or dismissed doesn't usually go above 10 or 15%. Now, sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It will cause a certain amount of disturbance. But it's important to realise that without the benefit of coup, In the last 5 years or so, in the UK, our civil service has shrunk between 30 and 40%. So we have managed to carry on. We've managed to carry on, delivering services and continuing to support the government of the day. So it is clear that Turkey should be able to absorb these kind of levels of change within their administration and still be able to deliver a practical service. That having been said, there are some areas within the system which have gone beyond the 10 or 15% levels. One of those, for example, is the health ministry, and the health ministry has been quite severely affected. The education ministry and the wider education system has been much more severely affected, with tens of thousands of teachers having been dismissed, for example, and they will take a bit longer to recover. From a business point of view, yes, some businesses have been targeted and identified as being either Gülenist financiers or Gülenist sympathisers, and senior figures have been arrested or under investigation. It is not enormously impactful in terms of the ability of the business sector to do business, and it really hasn't had a direct impact on the international business climate or access to the kind of businesses and the kind of potential partners that international businesses are looking for. I would also say at this point that the international investment community has reacted pretty stoically to the impact of the coup. Certainly many of the major investors, including most of the large-scale British investors, were very quick to condemn the coup, very quick to confirm that their intention was to retain their investments, if not expand their investments in Turkey, and they have followed through with that. Vodafone on the UK side in particular was very visible in that context. From our point of view, I know there are questions and concerns about the large-scale infrastructure work that is going on in Turkey. We have, for example, 5 high-value campaigns where we're making a particular effort as the government to support business to deliver in the financial services sector, the nuclear sector, the healthcare sector, on the new 3rd airport in Istanbul, and in the defence and security side. There are challenges to some of those. Some things are going more slowly than they would have done before, particularly healthcare, as I've already highlighted, for some of the administrative reasons with the health ministry still being a bit of a mess, and the nuclear industry and the nuclear activities have been delayed by 2 things. One, the dispute and kind of dislocation in the relationship with Russia, and some of the disturbance around the post-coup with the administration. But others, defence and security, the international grand airport, financial services to a large extent, have not been greatly knocked off track, shall we say. And those that have suffered some delays and perhaps are not exactly where they would want to be at this stage in terms of their programme, there's no sense that those activities are going to be discontinued or that those activities are going to be delayed significantly, but they'll just take a little bit longer to get back to the point and back on schedule. So I should quickly move on, I think, to Brexit. Yes, well, that was a bit of a surprise to all of us, to be honest, not least our former Prime Minister. It was certainly a surprise to the Turkish authorities. They did not think that was going to happen. And they were somewhat disquieted by some of the early implications for Turkey and, to a certain extent, the support that they had enjoyed from the UK for their ambition to become a member of the EU. But despite what was said during the Brexit campaign, Turkey is still some considerable distance away from meeting the criteria whereby it could become a member of the EU. And when I say some considerable distance, I think there are something like 32 criteria that any accession nation has to meet in order to be able to become a member. And they, in the last 30 years, have achieved one of those. So there is a considerable distance to go. There are serious questions about whether Turkey will, in the short to medium term, make serious progress on those criteria. That remains to be seen. But in terms of their relationship with us going forward, I think the initial shock has now turned to a measure of enthusiasm, actually on both sides. It's quite clear that we are a very important trading nation, very important trading partner for Turkey. We're a significant destination for their foreign direct investment. We are a growing importance in that respect, but we're already in Europe and globally, in fact, their largest export market. So we buy more from them than anybody else, having recently overtaken Germany in that context. So, getting the right trading arrangements with us is very important to them. Our flexibility and our ability to negotiate attractive terms of trade with Turkey going forward will depend a lot on the arrangements that we agree on for leaving the EU. Just to set out the options, if we were to stay in the European Customs Union and the single market, then essentially we would be bound by the same rules of trade that we currently have at the moment, and that would be linked to Turkey's customs union with the EU, which covers many areas of goods, excluding agriculture, but excludes services. If we were to leave the single market but stay in the customs union, essentially our terms of trade will not change very much. So for us to have real flexibility and to come up with, what should we say, an attractive offer, an improved terms of trade framework with Turkey, we would need not to be in the customs union, essentially. Nobody knows exactly what direction we're going to go in. The option of leaving the customs union is usually considered to be part of a hard Brexit package. We will have to see where we actually end up. But there is an assumption, shall we say, on the Turkish side that we will have some flexibility. They are pushing us quite hard to start talking about what the nature of any free trade agreement might be, so setting out kind of a framework and the parameters. Clearly, as has already been discussed quite widely in the press, we have limited recent experience of doing those things, and we need to build up our own capacity before we engage, and we also need to get to the point with our EU negotiations where we're actually permitted to engage or get to the point of signing new free trade agreements. But kind of understanding the ground rules and plotting out, shall we say, the kind of options that might exist is something that we will be taking forward in the coming months, and probably over the next 18 months or so we'll come to a fairly good understanding what the framework might look like. I would say going forward that there are continuing good opportunities, and there's a real possibility, I think, of a very positive outcome for our future trading relationship with Turkey. As my colleagues were saying, we are at a very special moment in the relationship, largely because unlike many of our European partners and many of our other nations around the world, the UK called the coup right very early on, and that has won us a lot of friends, and I think going forward will make the opportunities for securing a positive trade and a successful continuing relationship very good. I will wind up there and to allow us a chance to answer some of the questions you've already registered and to answer any more that you've now thought of. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Clive. That's really helpful. I'm going to crack straight on. It's 10 past 12 local time, 10 past 10 in the UK. We have another 20 minutes. Excuse me. I know we've had a number of questions, so perhaps we could start to take some of those questions. Jill.
Thank you very much, Neil. And yes, we've got lots of questions in, so we'll try to keep the responses as informative but as brief as possible so that we can get through as many as we can. And the first one we have here is, have British businesses or any Western companies been negatively impacted by the FETO persecutions?
Okay. The short answer to that is I am not aware of any. Clive, Serenai, yourselves?
No, I can't say that I've had any specific companies flagging that up as an issue for them, no.
No.
Thank you very much. And our next question here, have supply chain disruptions been experienced? And if so, how long do you expect them to continue for?
So again, I'll kick off with an answer, and I'll invite Serenai and Clive to sort of chip in. Again, I would say the answer is, I won't say the answer is no, but I have not come across any British companies who have contacted us in the last 3 months to say, you know, I'm waiting for goods from Turkey and they've not been delivered, not manufactured. I have not come across any. I'm sure there has been. Whether it's domestic only, I really don't know. It's a very, very good question. I've not come across any. Clive, Serenai?
I mean, I can't say that I can think of any particular instances from my experience, and you know, even internally, there isn't a sense that there are any shortages in any areas or any reporting about any kind of restrictions or difficulties in supply. But Sarah and I may know more.
Mm-hmm. Well, we haven't received any, you know, problems or anything that comes up from UK companies. But as far as we know, the logistics, operations, and customs procedures, they're all fine. I mean, nothing that we know of. But if there's any, of course, we'll just, you know, try to provide some more answers. And but as I said, we haven't come across any.
Thank you very much. And a question here from Richard. Richard's asking, will Britain's exit out of the EU improve or worsen Turkish-British trade relations?
Clive, can
yes.
Clive, I was going to ask you to reply to that one.
I will.
Thank you.
I mean, I think to a large extent, I probably talked around that subject already, but it will depend a lot on our terms of exit, as so many things will. But I think there is quite a good chance that it will actually improve those relations. I think if we do have a bit of additional flexibility, there are things that are easier for us to trade with Turkey than it is for the EU to trade with Turkey. One obvious example is around agricultural products and agricultural goods, where the UK's market is a bit more flexible than some other markets within the EU, so we would not necessarily want to have the same level of restriction as currently exists. And the kind of quid pro quo for that would be perhaps an opening up of the services market here in Turkey, which for the UK, where about 80% of our economy is in services, could be, you know, very beneficial and a real stimulus to bilateral trade. So I would say that, you know, there are very good prospects, assuming we do have that flexibility.
Yeah. This is Neil again in Istanbul. Can I just add to that? I think when the minister was here last week, he met with a number of leading both Turkish and British business people, and as you would imagine, with a British minister in town, the question of Brexit came up in every conversation. What was very telling was that there was a very high degree of optimism that Brexit would present an opportunity for our two countries to trade better, increase trade. Now, there was very little to sort of substantiate that, but that was a sort of business sense that was coming out for the minister. So that's, you know, hopefully what we can work towards in our sort of DIT and British Chamber teams here. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. And a question here from Lee. Referring back to the presentation, are the growth and inflation figures measured in Turkish lira or US dollars?
It's Ruth here. They're measured in US dollars.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And moving on to a question here from Nick. 200 billion inward investment to fund debt sounds worrying. How does that compare with countries of a similar size?
Yeah, I think the $200 billion is kind of worrying. Basically, Turkey's current account deficit is high, but they're sort of working to sort the problem out, I guess. But that's something that we need to watch for the future.
Thank you. And moving on to our next question here from Jason. Jason's firstly saying thank you for the presentations. He's enjoying the webinar, and he can't wait to continue his insurance project in Turkey. In a worst case scenario of serious civil disruption, what should British travellers do? Is there a specific contact number, point in Istanbul they should contact?
Thank you, Jason. That will give me, I'll take that question if I can, because in my spare time, when I'm not being the head of DIT here, I happen to be the crisis manager for the consulate. So this is something that we unfortunately are well versed in here. Jason, and to all other British travellers here, what I strongly suggest is that if you register for the alert that you can do for part of the FCO travel advice, that will give you, whenever the travel advice changes, you will get an alert on your mobile phone or your tablet, and it will tell you what the change is and what the latest advice is. And if we get to a situation where, as the question asked, there's serious problems in the country, the travel advice will set out what we advise British travellers to do. And that may be, stay in your hotel, do not come out until further notice, etc. And we can normally, when serious things happen, we normally change our travel advice within 30 to 60 minutes. It's a very quick system.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. And our next question here from Nick. DIT 5 priorities are big picture. What are the prospects for smaller UK enterprises, consultants, trainers, designers, teachers, for example?
Serenai, would you like to take that at the Chamber, because the Chamber deals with a lot of SMEs and smaller companies?
Yes, of course. By the way, it's I know Nick has been to Turkey, and we haven't seen each other for a while. Hope he's feeling better. We're always, open and welcoming, individuals, entrepreneurs, consultants, trainers, designers, and as I mentioned about our big network of professionals, there are always things that we can do. For similar, professionals, we're able to arrange workshops, roundtable meetings, events, and anything we can do really. So we look forward to hearing from you and just see what we can do for you, because we can build new smaller events and that you can find useful. So hopefully you can use BCTT as a platform for that.
Could I add something to that as well, Serenai? I think, to be honest, the opportunities have not really been dramatically affected by the events of the 15th of July. I think the opportunities are still there. But, Turkey was a challenging market before the attempted coup and remains a challenging market. And it is important to do some fundamental research before you start to identify the scale and scope of that market. And very importantly, it's critical to identify the right local representation. And Serenai and her team at the BCCT can help you with that research and that challenge of finding the right representation. If you do that, this market is still open and offers a lot of very valuable opportunities for small and medium-sized enterprises across a very broad range of sectors.
Yeah, and again, if I can just add on the back of that, I think it all boils down to having the right, as Clive says, the right partner, but the right product, innovative and creative, at the right price. It's very difficult, Nick, to find an example where there isn't an opportunity. I think it's all a question about coming into the market, doing the research, finding your local rep, and with a bit of time, because obviously relationships are key to doing business here, whether it's big companies doing multi-million pound deals or small companies doing, much smaller projects. Turkey, like many other markets, is very much about building those personal relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. And we have a question here from Erhan. It's quite a long question, so bear with me while I read it out. A lot of doubts have arisen over the capacity of Turkey's policy-making institutions, and especially on the ability of civil servants to progress on the implementation of legal reforms and new investment programs, such as the large infrastructure project pipeline following the state of emergency, and a large number of civil servants are under investigation and have been removed from their posts. Could you please comment on how you see this evolve in the future? Will the Turkish authorities be able to deliver on their plans?
If I can, thank you, Jill, for reading that out. If I can summarise that question, I think what Erhan is asking basically is, following the coup, purge of civil servants, do the authorities have the capacity to continue to implement reform and projects? That's how I would take that question. Clive, I'm going to push that one to you, sir. You're in Ankara, you're in the capital, the sort of decision-making centre. How would you answer that question?
I mean, I think to a certain extent I did talk through some of those issues when I was wittering on earlier. But, I think it is a bit of a mixed picture. As I said, there are some ministries, education, health in particular, which have more issues than others. I would say that all of them are starting to get their act together. The armed forces in particular, and if you have business which is linked to the armed forces, that might take a little bit longer to stabilise and kind of refocus on its purchasing policies, for example. SSM, which does most of the purchasing, is kind of an offshoot of the Ministry of Defence. On the other hand, has not had an enormous amount of dislocation. There's still a certain amount of staff turnover, but that still is progressing and still is working and pushing forward on very major projects. So I would say it is starting to come right. Some ministries will take longer than others. As I say, on the civil side, that is really around health and education from our point of view. But it is not the case that things have stalled entirely. They've just started to go a bit more slowly than they would have otherwise. If you want to talk about the reforms, major structural reforms, that's another question, and I don't think that's so much about the impact of changes of personnel or reduction in personnel. It's about the extent to which it is a focus of political will at this moment in time, and some of that energy may have dropped off, and some of those structural reforms may therefore take longer to happen, or may not happen in the short term at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And a question here from Lee. Where are the new nuclear plants planned?
Okay, Lee. Thank you for that one. What we can do, I will answer the question, but we can put you in contact with our trade manager who looks after the nuclear sector and our high value campaign, and we can get her to send you all the major details about the projects after the webinar. That's not a problem at all. Basically, the first nuclear power plant is planned for an area called Akuyu, and the second one is planned for an area in Sinop. The major contractors for the first one is Rosatom, the Russians, and for the second one it's a sort of, I think I'm right in saying it's a Japanese and French joint venture consortium. I don't think we've got to sort of prime contractors for the third one yet. This project has suffered quite a few delays over the years, so as I say, if I can put you in touch with our trade manager who works in Clive's team in Ankara, we can give you a bit more chapter and verse about that by email. Thank you.
And our next question here from John. John is asking, does the mass exclusion and alienation of the Gulenist risk creating a large group of disaffected people who will cause increased polarisation and division within the country?
Thank you, John. That's also an extremely good question. I think it would be too simplistic to say, to give it a yes or a no answer. I think there are obviously risks. Yes, there will be disaffected people. There will be some kind of increased polarization and division within the country. That, you know, I think there will be a sort of them and us scenario. I think if we're honest, there is a little bit of that politically in Turkey already, where you have you know, the current government, the AKP, and President Erdogan, they have been in power now since 2012. They've turned the economy round. Some of the more recent political moves that the party and the president have made, that has, I think, and I think that's evidenced by what you see on social media here in the newspapers, I think that has also created polarization of political views within the country, and that can be almost, you know, again, a very broad generalization, but the AKP heartlands are the Anatolian Plains. The opposition parties tend to do better in the big sort of Istanbul, Izmir centres, etc. So yeah, I think we could probably talk about that quite at length, John, and I would be happy to pick up with you on that one.
May I say something about that as well, Neil?
Yeah, sure. I think the answer is yes, but I think there's lots of layers to it.
Yeah, I think it's yes, but perhaps not on a scale that should generate enormous anxiety. I mean, it's important to realise that all of the opposition parties, who, as Neil has outlined, have some serious opposing views to where the government and the AKP party stands on many issues, but all of the opposition parties soundly and roundly condemn the coup. Most of those have been working in a kind of government of national unity in terms of going around to Turkey's friends around the world and kind of reinforcing the message that you know, democracy is strong in Turkey, and that everybody is condemning the coup, and everybody sees Turkey's future very much in the democratic sphere, and they are all behind that, regardless of whatever their political views are. So, you know, a Gulenist cultist movement, whilst it caused an enormous shock to the system, isn't on a scale that is an ongoing threat to the democracy in Turkey, and is not what you would call kind of a popular uprising or anything like that. If you look at the political parties and the percentage of the population that they represent, you know, it's in the high 90s. So it's not something that we would expect to keep coming back or to start to become you know, a form of popular protest, shall we say.
Thanks, Clive. Jill, do we have time for one more question?
Yes, we do. We're just coming up to about 10:29. So the next question that we'll take is from Andrew. Andrew is asking, can we expect the current political and business climate to be the norm for the foreseeable future? At a practical level, has doing business in Turkey changed over the last 12 months?
Okay, thank you for that question, Andrew. I think the first part of the question, can we expect the current climate to be the norm? Yes, I think we can, but I would qualify that by saying, you know, what is, you know, people often use the term business as normal, business as usual. You know, what does that actually mean? I think what Turkey is very good at is adapting. Business here, people here, they adapt on a regular basis, and they have done for many decades. In, you know, Turkey has had sort of political ups and downs. It's had military coups in the 60s, 70s and 80s. It's had economic shocks like the Western world. But invariably, like all of us, Turkey bounces back. So I think where we are at the moment is a good place. I mean, I don't see it as a bad place where we are. If that's what we're calling normal, then yes, I think we'll be there. Practical level, has doing business changed? My personal view is no, it hasn't. I've been here 2 years, and I'm doing exactly the same sort of business development work on behalf of UK companies that I was doing 2 years ago. The fundamentals of us talking to Turkish companies, looking at talking to them about opportunities for British companies, matching companies up with them, getting them to do business, companies coming in and investing, Turkish companies investing overseas. All that good, lovely mix of stuff has all stayed the same. So practical level, no. I think everything, doing business is the same as it was.
Thank you very much, Neil. And I'll just hand back to you just for any closing remarks you have before we end the webinar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jill. So once again, I know there's been a large number of you on this webinar this morning, and we are truly grateful for you giving up your time. Many thanks. I hope it's been informative. I'm sorry if we've not been able to answer all the questions or we've not covered all of the points in our various presentations, but as I said at the opening, we're really keen to engage with everybody, and if there's anything in follow-up that we can do, and I've just put up a slide with our contact details on there, please do drop us a line and we will try and answer questions. At the beginning of November, myself and some of the Chamber colleagues will be back in the UK on a little bit of a, I won't call it a roadshow, that sounds far too grand, but we'll be back visiting London, South-East, South-West, East Midlands, West Midlands, and East of England and a few other regions. Again, if you would like to meet either myself, Clive is coming back at the end of November, beginning of December, myself, Clive, or Chamber colleagues, again, please do drop us a line or speak to your local ITA. We're more than happy, if we've got time, if we're in the right region on the right day, we'd be delighted to contact you, talk with you, and see how we can help. So that's all I wanted to say. Just again, finally, a very big thank you to you all for taking part today. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Neil. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation. It's just 3 really quick questions, so we would be grateful if you could keep your browser window open and complete that and provide your feedback for us. You will also receive, as I mentioned, a follow-up email within 24 hours, which will include a link to the recording of today's webinar, which you are able to share. On behalf of the Department for International Trade and our presenters, thank you so much for joining us, and please do enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.